Hey, what's up guys? Alex Espinoza with the Rickey Henderson of YouTube. Make sure to use the code RickeyBlog at lastibar.com for 10% off your next order. The guys are pumping out a bunch of cool stuff, Coliseum related. Even though the A's are gone, Last Bar is still here, baby. So go check them out. Use that promo code RickeyBlog. And yeah, so as I'm recording this, it is Thursday, March 27th, and I can't believe it's opening day. It really snuck up on me. You know, this really used to be like a Christmas day for me. You know, I was like counting down to opening day every year to see the A's and everything. But of course, the way everything's gone down the past few years, my love for MLB has faded. So now it's like when I scroll through MLB stuff on social media, I just kind of pass through it now these days, you know. So I think MLB lost me. I'm sure they're going to pick up fans in Vegas. For every person that they lose like me, they'll pick up somebody in Vegas or Sacramento. But it's just kind of a weird feeling not caring about opening day anymore. I mean, MLB and the A's really killed it for me. So, and the only reason I even realized it was opening day is because I did a little bit of research and I was like, oh, Forbes usually drops its team valuations around opening day. And I was like, oh crap, it's the 27th. So I want to do a quick recap of where things stand after the March 6th Las Vegas Stadium Authority meeting. And I did a full in-depth video about that about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. About a week ago. And so you can go check that out. I'll drop the link in the description down below too. But so the A's and the Las Vegas Stadium Authority held another meeting on March 6th. The biggest news that came out of this is that the A's dropped a third set of renderings, probably the most realistic look of what this thing could look like if it does get built. And another little piece of news that we got from Stadium Authority CFO Ed Finger was that there could be groundbreaking and foundational work on this project in June. It's not super committal, this language, but here's what Ed Finger had to say.
Mr. Chair, the pace of development predicts April Earth movement, June foundational work on the project.
So again, nothing too committal or confident there, but just saying, hey, if things go according to plan, I think they could have groundbreaking in April. All right, so now let's jump into some news, some articles that have come out the past couple of weeks. Earlier this week, Forbes put out its annual MLB team valuations, and the A's have jumped all the way from 29th to 19th place. Last year, they were worth $1.2 billion in these valuations, and now that they've left Oakland, they're supposedly valued at $1.8 billion, according to Forbes. So it's kind of giving me, it's kind of scratching my head about this, but they offered a brief explanation in their article. This is what they said. They said the largest increase this year belongs to the A's, who climbed 50% to $1.8 billion, even as they move into a minor league ballpark in West Sacramento for the next 3 seasons. Many around the sport have high hopes for the Athletics' eventual move to Las Vegas and the plan for a new stadium there. But after a miserable end to their 57-year run in Oakland, even the stopgap situation isn't looking so bad, with the team's season ticket base having grown significantly since last year. Again, this kind of strikes me as kind of odd. It's like, damn, they really went up 50% just because they left Oakland. I mean, I guess a lot of this valuation hinges on the optimism in Vegas. And they mentioned the season ticket base growing, but of course, you know, they systematically like decimated that season ticket base so they could have this storyline. Maybe they could say, oh no, we're growing it now. But it's easy to grow your season ticket base when you're basically starting from zero, you know. So just looking at some numbers heading into opening day, some other numbers about the A's as they're about to open up in Sacramento, or technically they're going to be in Seattle and then they'll be in Sacramento on the 31st, but you know, Susan Slusser also reported that the A's kept more than 2/3 of their estimated TV deal with Sacramento. And now that they're moving into this smaller ballpark, they also have higher demand, of course. And that means they have the highest median ticket price in the league, according to Game Time. And Bob Nightingale shared that information a little while ago. So, you know, the A's made a lot of big deals this season. They signed free agent Luis Severino, and they signed extensions with Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler. They traded for Jeffrey Springs, who I think is going to be the second highest paid player on the team this year. And if you remember, The Athletic reported that the A's needed to reach like an $105 million payroll threshold to collect their full share of revenue sharing. And yeah, according to COTS, the A's they're going to have a 40-man competitive balance payroll of $111 million. So it looks like the A's are, I guess, in pretty good. They're doing better in financial shape than they were a year ago, or you know, they're spending this money, and at least outwardly, they're putting up this impression that, hey, things are healthy. And I'm sure, at least to normal folks like me, this $1.8 billion valuation, means something. I don't know if the billionaires have their own people who can do their own reporting. But it looks like the A's kind of have some momentum right now, even though there's a lot of haters and everybody's. And believe me, I'm a huge hater on John Fisher. I've had a lot of doubts about this whole process, but it looks like they might be getting some momentum, and I can kind of see a way for them to get out of this and get this going to Vegas. So, again, it's going to be weird. They're opening in Sacramento. They're going to have Vegas on one arm, Sacramento on the other arm, I believe. But that's just the A's way. So this is just kind of weird. So that's kind of the current state of the A's, and I think this new valuation is a factor because, of course, the A's are still shopping around minority stakes or minority shares in order to get more funding for this Vegas ballpark. So the next article I want to talk about is a recent update from CNBC. And a couple weeks ago, they reported that there are, quote, several investors that have been vetted by MLB who are willing to put in more than $200 million combined at an enterprise value of $2 billion. So this $2 billion is not as far off from 1.8 as it was from 1.2. Maybe the A's don't seem as crazy as I thought they were. So this $2 billion figure that they've been shopping around, this has been something that the A's have been using since 2024. We had a fan, an A's, I think he's an A's fan, he's a Bay Area sports fan, saying that his brother was in some meetings last year and the A's were shopping it at $2 billion, and a lot of people were scoffing at it. And then even a couple of weeks ago, I guess there was hesitation within the financing community. Our buddy Vitamin D, who's tapped in with the developer scene, he shared some recent thoughts from a financier about this, and he tweeted a couple of weeks ago that he's hearing that there are stupid rich investors who are interested in owning a portion of the A's in Vegas, but the major holdup is the valuation methodology, specifically agreeing upon the investment equity ratios today in relation to the valuation on a pre-Vegas move versus post-Vegas move. And then, so basically he's saying, that $1.2 billion versus the $2 billion before, that was a pretty big holdup for investors. And then he also even shared a quote from a financier, I don't know, is that French? I don't know. He said, if John's using our investors' money to fund the park, it needs to be at the team's current valuation. Why would we pay tomorrow's price for today's asset that we cause to appreciate in value? Sorry, that's not how it works. Once John and Sandy, that's John Fisher and Sandy Dean, understand, we're ready. So again, these tweets were posted a couple of weeks ago when the A's were still publicly valued at $1.2 billion. And again, I don't know if billionaires have their own ways to have, people appraise and value the A's franchise to see how much they're actually worth. But now, at least publicly, instead of being 67% overvalued at $2 billion, they're only overshooting by 11%. So, that difference between $2 billion and $1.8 billion and $1.2 billion is pretty big. So according to CNBC, the A's potentially have $200 million in outside investors who are interested and have been vetted by MLB. And another nugget that we got from this article is that the A's are reportedly looking for $550 million in private investments total to soften the blow for the Fisher family. So that's up from the $500 million figure that was first reported by the LA Times last year in April, and then reported again by the New York Post in October. So it looks like the A's are looking for $550 million now. So that's another update that we got from this article. So here's an updated look at the financial picture of the current $1.75 billion project. I mean, this is just how it is for now. I think this picture is going to change over the next few months, or even in the next few weeks, really. We could find out some more information. But this includes $1.1 billion pledge from the Fisher family, $350 million in public funding from Nevada, $300 million in construction loans from U.S. Bank and Goldman Sachs. And then they're also seeking $550 million now in private investments. So for now, the ballpark budget is $1.75 billion. And that's already up from its original budget of $1.5. But if you remember back in December, Steve Hill, the Las Vegas Stadium Authority president, he hinted that yes, it went up to 1.75, but it could go up again. So, hey, we could be looking at $2 billion for this thing.
It's very clear in the law that there is a cap on the amount of public investment that can be made of $380 million in this project, and that any overages in the cost of the stadium are the responsibility of the A's, which they are taking. The way that process works, because this may not be the last time, we hope for you that it is, but may not be the last time that the costs rise. And
so if we keep that in mind, all those, I know I'm going to be throwing even more numbers at you. Hope you're strapped in, but so if we keep that in mind, Steve Hill saying that the price could go up again. We could be looking at $2 billion. So even with this $1.75 billion budget the A's have allotted, they're still going to be maybe $250 million short. And after doing some research, I think MLB could step in here and kind of bail out Fisher and the A's with a couple of funds. And these are two funds that I haven't really seen discussed much, by the media throughout this whole process. And I was just doing some research because, the A's, for a lot of this process, they've been really kind of following the Raiders' lead, like following the Raiders' blueprint in Vegas, like down to the language and the development agreement, all that stuff. And even recently, they hired Mark Bedane to be their president, and he was the Raiders' president when they got Allegiant Stadium done. So, one thing I remember about the Raiders process is they secured $200 million through a $200 million loan through something called the NFL G4 Stadium Loan Program. And it made me think, I wonder if MLB has a stadium loan program, and it turns out they do. And they actually have two different sources of funds that the A's could probably, use to get money for this project, to get it done, get it over the finish line. So, I got a lot of my information from this series of really informative LinkedIn posts by a lawyer. His name is Jeffrey Schlurf. I guess he's an attorney at Stinson LLP, so shout out to Jeffrey Schlurf for this one. And this article was written in April of 2024, so some of the information is dated, especially the stuff about the Rays, but a lot of it is still relevant here. So he notes how at the time that there was 8 different MLB teams, 8 out of the 30, who were either looking for a whole new stadium or at least trying to get some significant funding to get some big renovations or upgrades to their stadiums. And here are the 8 teams. It's the A's, the Rays, the Royals, the White Sox, the Brewers, the Orioles, Angels, and Diamondbacks. So those are the 8 teams who are in MLB right now, kind of looking to upgrade their stadium situations. Also, another thing he notes is that how MLB in the past has just given out straight loans to teams, like when they're in distress, like when the Bernie Madoff scandal, like the Ponzi scheme happened a few years ago, whatever. I guess MLB gave the Mets $25 million. And then when Frank McCourt was going through his ugly divorce and thing with the Dodgers, I guess that MLB gave the Dodgers $150 million to kind of get through that situation or something like that. So I don't think it's that desperate for the A's, but I think that's always the very last thing you can go to Uncle Rob, So, however, but there are 2 different funding mechanisms that the A's could use, and one of them is called the Major League Baseball Trust Securitization. And as Schlurf describes it, this facility consists of various tranches of credit lines highly rated by the credit agency Fitch. Teams are able to borrow for their operating needs at relatively low interest rates given the creditworthiness of the league. MLB's current borrowing limit from this facility is $125 million, but teams can borrow from other outside sources of other sources outside of this program, subject to MLB's debt service rule. So. And he also knows that it's hard to find much public info from this stuff, and then he gets most of his information from something called the Fitch Credit Ratings, which is like a global credit ratings that kind of judges loans and all that kind of stuff. And in December, Fitch Credit Ratings reported that MLB issued loans through the Trust Securitization Fund one for $155 million, one for $6 million, and one for $20 million. So. Again, I have no idea how this stuff works, but I guess it was just used a few months ago, and supposedly the limit is $125 million per team. I don't know how there was a $155 million loan. I don't know if that went to multiple teams or whatever, but there was money moved through this thing recently. So that's the first fund, the MLB Trust Securitization Fund. So reportedly, up to $125 million of funds that the A's could use towards this project, I would assume. And then the second fund is called the MLB Stadium Fund, which was supposedly founded around 2017, and it is, quote, intended to allow a team to borrow for a new or renovated ballpark. So according to Fitch Ratings, this MLB Stadium Fund, the second fund, has a credit limit of $100 million per team. So another thing that's interesting to note is the timing of this MLB Stadium Fund. I guess it was started in 2017, which is right when the A's brought Dave Kaval on board to really spearhead their stadium efforts, when they really took a a real deep dive into the Howard Terminal and Coliseum possibilities. And you would think that, hey, maybe MLB started this to help out the A's in Oakland, but they never got around to it, And I really can't remember hearing people talking about this MLB Stadium Fund or this MLB Trust Securitization Fund throughout this whole process. So I at least just want to make people aware of it. Anyways, there's two new avenues that people aren't talking about for the A's to secure loans to help them get these things done. So again, the first fund is called the MLB Trust Securitization Fund. And according to Fitch Ratings, they already have, like $1.7 billion kind of in the pot and $1.5 billion in commitments. So $1.5 billion have already been spent or committed. And as far as the MLB Stadium Fund, which is the newer one, I guess they have $517 million in that pot with $97 million of it allotted with commitments so far. So, hey, we got to keep an eye on these two funds. Maybe these are two things that could come down the pipe in the next year or two if they need to get some more, if the budget goes up and they need to account for this extra $2 billion or this extra $250 million or whatever it's going to cost for them to get this thing done. So, another thing that's worth noting is that MLB elevated John Fisher to its 8-man executive council in February. So maybe he could, tip his thumb on the scales a little bit. Maybe even open up those limits. I don't know how this thing works. Again, this is purely speculation, but I think all these things are worth noting. So back in February, as Devin Truby of ABC 10 Sacramento reported, Fisher visited Sutter Health Park with MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. So it looks like he's all buddy-buddy with Robbie. And they also held a private luncheon that day, and it featured Kings owner Vivek Ranadive. And he is making an active pitch to Manfred to keep him in Sacramento. He wasn't really shy about it. According to the Sacramento Bee, this is what Ranadive said at the function. He said, "When you think of Sacramento and this whole mega region, it's really one of the biggest economies in the world. So I'm just going to keep pitching you and saying Sacramento, Sacramento, Sacramento." And then Manfred responded by saying, "I'm not going to forget the 10 million people." So, that's just kind of a big picture of where everything stands. Fisher's on the executive council. They have potentially up to $225 million more in these MLB funds that they could use to maybe get their budget up to $1.925 billion in potential funding. So I know I just threw a bunch of numbers at you. So here's a little graphic to kind of help it out a little bit. So here's a potential path to $1.925 billion budget for this thing. $1.1 billion from the Fishers, but of course they're trying to seek their investment in half. $350 million from Nevada, $300 million in construction loan from U.S. Bank and Goldman Sachs, and $225 million from MLB. And then, of course, that $550 million that they seek from outside investors. So maybe with this new valuation and these other untapped funds, maybe there is a way for the A's to really get this thing done. I've been really skeptical of this whole thing, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel for the A's here. Maybe they can get this thing done, So another big piece of this puzzle too is the Fisher family finances. They got to come up with this $1.1 billion. I don't think it's going to be like they have to just hand MLB a check for $1.1 billion. Of course, there's going to be a lot of borrowed money involved and everything. But I've been keeping an eye on the Gap. The Gap is their family business. It's been around. That's how they got their family fortune. And I've been keeping an eye on Gap stocks for the past few months, kind of periodically. And I'm no financial guy. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to decipher some SEC filings. So, I started this blog to do baseball highlights, but I thought it was worth noting that on March 10th, each of the three Fisher brothers, so that's John, Bob, and Bill, they each redistributed 27 million Gap shares. So that's 81 million total Gap shares, 27 million each. So each of them, they each had weirdly named LLCs in Delaware where they were sole proprietors. And so they each had 27 million of these LLCs, but now they divided it. 22 million have gone to a limited partnership and 5 million has gone to their direct ownership. So here's a look at their 3 SEC forms if you want to see that. So again, I don't really know what this means. Nothing was sold. I want to clarify, nothing was sold. They just moved stuff to different accounts. But I just think given the backdrop that they're trying to get the stadium done, it was certainly worth noting, So, and according to these other SEC filings I was looking at, I guess John owns about 56.1 million in Gap stocks. Bob owns about 57.3 million in Gap stocks, and Bill owns about 61.6 million in Gap stocks. So if you put that all together, and that's not even including the mom, I'm not sure how much the mom has, Doris, but between just the three brothers, that's 175 million in Gap stocks. And at Thursday morning's trading price of about $21.70, that comes out to about $3.8 billion just in Gap stock, I think, So the most recent Forbes family estimate, or the Fisher family estimate we had from Forbes, came back in 2020, so it's been 5 years now. But it valued the Fisher family at $8.9 billion, and most people nowadays, I think they're worth about $10 billion. So again, a lot of numbers I just threw at you. I'm not sure what this all means, and I doubt they just sell off, a quarter of their family's company just to get the $1 billion. To get this stadium done for their other company. Another factor too is I'm sure they would have to pay crazy taxes if they just did sold $1 billion in Gap stocks or whatever. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I just thought it was worth noting that all of these shares moved around. So that's just the Gap stock stuff. It's worth noting that the other, the Fisher family, they have their money tied up in a lot of different places that we don't know about. John he's also had something called Pisces Inc., which is a private company, and another investment firm. He's partners with Sandy Dean. It's called Sansom Partners. And I was just kind of snooping around to see what I could find about this private company stuff. And I guess Sansom Partners, which owns the Mendocino Redwoods Company, which is the biggest owner of redwoods in the whole world, they recently made a $24 million sale. So maybe that paid for Luis Severino's contract this year. So, but honestly, just all the stuff, coming together, I think if it comes down to it with the new valuation, and if they can find, and it sounds like they have interested investors, and if MLB steps in or the A's, access these loans from MLB, I just kind of see a way for Fisher to get this done. I've been really skeptical this whole time, but I kind of see the way for Fisher to get out of this thing, get the ballpark down in Vegas. And for what it's worth, our friend and outspoken critic, Scott Rogan of Vital Vegas, he's, at least as of last week, he still thought it was all a fairy tale, or as he put in his headline, a cavalcade of horseshit, marks A's latest effort to bamboozle investors. So again, they honestly still are in kind of a late investment round stage. They're kind of pushing up against this potential April groundbreaking, and they're still touting Vegas 2028, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. Because as far as I know, there's nothing really time binding. I don't think there's any language that they're holding up on. It's if and when they get the money, they can kind of go ahead with the green light. So sounds like, Manfred's in no rush to get Fisher out of there anytime soon. So, and to wrap it up, I want to talk about something happy. Talk about Oakland, baby. And I just want to talk about a look back at Saturday's Saturday's Oakland Roots opener at the Coliseum. Really a historic day, I think, for Oakland sports, kind of ushering in this new era. We kind of saw it with the beginning of Fans Fest on March 1st, but March 22nd, I think will go down as a really important day in Oakland sports history, So, it looked amazing in there. They set a USL record with 26,575 fans. It looks like there was a classic tailgate out there at the reverse boycott spot. They had the field was looking beautiful. Shout out to Clay Wood. It was pretty much the whole lower bowl was filled out. And in the 24th minute, they had a minute of applause for Rickey Henderson. Too Short did the halftime show. We got an epic first goal from Justin Rasmussen, who had this crazy bicycle kick. There was Let's Go Oakland chants, this amazing tifo that said Forever Oakland. And, I just love this video. I think her name is Kat Carpenter, and she showed the wave going around the Coliseum. And I just really loved it. It seemed like such a great night. So shout out to everybody who was there. I'm still in Mexico. I'll be back home soon. But, the Roots lost 2-1. They're 0-3. But I don't think, I don't know, man. It doesn't matter. Yeah, of course, if they win, it's it's important. It's a big thing, but that was a huge win for Oakland on Saturday. So shout out to all the fans. Can't wait to be out there in Raimondi Park. And some other, this is a little bit of news. Major League Cricket's coming to the Coliseum. The San Francisco Unicorns are coming to town, but maybe they should rebrand to Oakland. The Oakland Unicorns, huh? But hey, what do I know? So good times at the Coliseum. Gotta love Oakland. Shout out to Oakland and the fans for keeping it alive. Really, really cool scenes there. So, all right, that's it. Thanks a lot for this Rickey. Thanks a lot for tuning into this Rickey Report. Make sure to use the code RickeyBlog at lastdivebar.com for your next order. I'm your boy, Alex Espinoza. I'll be back home in a few weeks. So see you at the ballpark. See you at the Coliseum. All right, have a good one, guys.